We begin with breaking news. Japan and the International Olympic Committee agreeing to postpone the 2020 Summer Games. The Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe spoke with IOC members today on the phone to talk about this. There was building pressure to postpone them. Abe had said earlier this week a delay seemed inevitable. Canada and Australia had already decided against sending teams to compete. The U.S. was also in favor of delaying the Games. Let's bring in CTV and TSN commentator Brian Williams. He joins us now from Toronto to talk some more about this. Brian, we spoke yesterday. You also thought something had to be done, some sort of delay or cancellation. What are you thinking now?
Good morning, Marilla. Well, I'm happy. This is good for the athletes. Finally, the International Olympic Committee is putting the welfare and health of the athletes ahead of money. But again, the IOC was late. They were hemming, they were hawing. It took the Prime Minister of Japan to call and request this. So yes, it is the right thing to do. It gives the athletes time to stay home, to be quarantined or self-isolating. They're not able to train now. This is the absolute right move. It's a move that was sparked yesterday or the day before when the Canadian Olympic Committee said they would not send athletes to compete in the summer of 2020 this summer. They were followed by Australia, the Canadian Olympic Committee was, and other countries, and of course the United States, the head of the Track and Field Association there and the head of American swimming, both glamour sports, both dominated by the U.S., were calling for a postponement.
So Brian, it's good news, but games have been canceled in the past only during wartime. This is really unprecedented.
This is unprecedented indeed. Yes, they've been canceled 1916 World War I, 40 and 44, and World War II coming back in London in 1948. But the postponement, I think, is good for the athletes. I mean, if you're an older athlete, this may have been your last chance to compete in the Games. Younger ones can come back. There's no way the Games could have gone this summer. There's been no training. Would you want a son or a daughter out training under these conditions? Once again, the IOC has been the last to get on board. The Canadian Olympic Committee, courage and integrity leading the way. Then it took the Prime Minister of Japan to phone the IOC. The IOC finally got its act together, has done the right thing, and is delaying these games 1 year. The delay, though, I got to tell you, is a huge, huge undertaking because the Summer Games, with more than 11,000 athletes, 100 countries, are the biggest regularly scheduled peacetime event on Earth. So security, hotels, travel, it's going to be a huge effort, but this is what the athletes wanted. The athletes did not want to compete this summer. Now they have a chance to compete next summer, and then the Games will go after that 3 years later, 1924. In Paris.
Brian, let me get your take on one other thing. Obviously, some of those athletes have already qualified for the Olympics. Some have yet to go through qualification. Do you think that whole process has to start again, or those who qualified for this year should be allowed in next year?
Well, that will be up, I believe, to the individual sports federations in the countries around the world to decide exactly who qualifies and who doesn't. Yes, some have qualified. Some haven't. You can't go and train right now under these conditions. That will be up to the individual countries and the IOC. It'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, a lot of other decisions, I'm sure, have to be made very soon, even to get things going for next year. Brian Williams, thank you as always. Your input, always appreciated.
Marilla, thank you again. And let me just emphasize this. Finally, the International Olympic Committee is putting the health and well-being of the athletes ahead of money. Canada led the way. Full congratulations to Tricia Smith, David Schumacher of the Canadian Olympic Committee. That started the ball rolling. It took the Prime Minister of Japan to call the IOC. As always, the IOC was last, but it is absolutely the right thing to postpone these games 1 year.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Marilla.